We did 18 months total of counseling. It's hard to explain the frustration of going through that sort of thing when you think you're going to find solutions and instead it does nothing. Learning how to respond to your spouse and giving them a feeling of security instead of insecurity allows them to open up a lot. Week 4, she fired her attorney. The feelings that you get going through this program are feelings like that best friend feeling back again. To get that best friend back again, priceless, absolutely priceless.
Just got to be coachable. Men, the admission for today's video is only one thing. Press that like button, but more importantly for you, press the subscribe button. Make sure after you hit the subscribe button that you do change those settings to all. I don't want you to miss one single video that could actually help you save your marriage. Curtis, whenever you found Divorce Stoppers, can you share with our audience here, like, where were you at in your marriage? Like, were you guys separated, or had you already went through a divorce, or what was going on there? And then what were some of the things that you had tried that you didn't see the results that you were hopeful for?
Well, I first of all, thank you. Great to be here and great to share things. But we were probably when I found Divorce Stoppers, we were living together but living separately.
Okay.
She was upstairs and I was downstairs. We had tried traditional counseling through the church, and we even sought a psychiatrist, a marriage counselor, a professional marriage counselor.
Okay.
There just seemed to be so much focus on just the problems and not solutions. We found it very, very frustrating. Frankly, was making things worse because we were coming home after having had these discussions about all the problems in our marriage and not coming to any solutions with it. And it was not a good situation for us at the time.
I see. How long were you two married whenever you first started having maybe marital problems?
We've been together for 17 years. 17 years is a long time. And when I met my wife and we decided to get married, we were best friends. I mean, she was literally my best, not only that I love her to death, but she was my best friend. And to have that, after so many years start to fall apart was absolutely horrifying to us. But 15, 16 years, things really started to look bad for us. We had the added disadvantage, I think, of being business partners. So we were together 24/7. And it just started to wear on us, going to the kids' games and soccer and so on and so forth. And then working together all day, it wore us down. We were exhausted. We were mentally exhausted, physically exhausted, the whole realm of issues. But it was probably in the last couple of years that we went and sought some help for this. We at least, you get to that point where you're talking about divorce and it becomes very, very real. And somebody has to break that glass and go, let's talk to somebody.
I got you.
And to do that and then go through that counseling and not have that help, it is a very helpless feeling when you do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you guys actually sought the help of two different counselors, right? You went through the church first. How did that work out? How long was that? And then what led you to the professional counselor?
I think we did maybe 18 months total of counseling.
Okay.
Maybe half of that time with the church and half of that time, seeking out the professional marriage counselor. Just unbelievable. I can't believe it's hard to explain the frustration of going through that sort of thing when you think you're going to find solutions that are going to pull you and your spouse back together, and instead it does nothing. It's a horrible feeling. To reach out to your program, honestly, Denver, was such a godsend for us that it's very hard to put into words. It's something that her and I, even to this day, get emotional about, which is absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, it's not that uncommon that the wives a lot of times see the men changing so much, and they want some of that too, when they see that it's genuine change and that it's real. Let me ask you a question. So when you guys got to the pivotal point where you actually reached out to me and inquired about the program, your wife had already, so you guys were still living together, but she had actually filed a divorce, right? Or am I wrong about that?
Oh yeah, she had. Oh yeah, she had hired the attorney, and the paperwork was being drawn up. It was at that point. I was still downstairs, and she was still upstairs, and man, it was coming down to the wire, so to speak. I thought, I looked everywhere to try to find solutions. My feelings about the marriage were that, man, ever since I was young, you get married and marriage is forever. Yeah, you hear about divorce rates and all the things that people go
Yeah.
through, but that wasn't what I wanted. I never wanted that. And to reach out and find your program, like I said, just amazing.
Okay, gotcha. So when you join the program, it's a 7-week program, and we give all of our clients the option to continue that past 7 weeks if they want to, keep seeing additional results after they achieve the result that they found us for, which is to get their wife back. But then you start realizing that it's more than that. She wasn't with you though originally; like she was still headed toward divorce when you joined the program. Is that right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And for her to see the changes in me, not only in normal everyday conversation, but I think that she noticed right off the bat my responses to some of the things that she would say had changed, and she was starting to pick up on the little things that I was doing differently. Um, I think we talk a lot in the program about how to respond to things, and those are solutions that I didn't have in the counseling, and I didn't have at the church counseling. But learning how to respond to your spouse, learning how to respond to somebody that you love, and giving them a feeling of security instead of insecurity, allows them to open up a lot. And it was a great moment to see that sort of transition.
Speaking of transition, so when you started going through the program with your first 7 weeks, I know she had filed a divorce. At what stage in the program do you feel like that there was a transition up here and maybe in your heart in a way that it became genuine so that the dynamic of your marriage, because you guys were still in the same household, so you had an opportunity there to maybe test some of these things in person. Uh,
Right.
how long were you in the program before you started seeing some many wins in your actual marriage with your wife?
I think we probably immediately, but I got to tell you the big win, of course, man, week 4. Week 4, Denver, of the program. You know this well, but week 4, she fired her attorney. And man, you want to talk about, waving the checkered flag and having that moment of just absolute delight. Yeah, I mean, I almost wasn't even expecting it. She just sort of came home from work one day and said, "I need to let you know something. I fired my attorney." And I think my first thought might have been, "And you hired another one?" But that was. I'm glad you didn't. But that was, yeah, 4 weeks into the program, some things had changed. Things were changing immediately, but I think probably around the end of the second week, third week, she could see that I was serious about it, and she knew that there was something there that was really gonna help us.
So you had mentioned like a safety that she felt more comfortable talking to you. And that, that's the core of the program is we teach emotional safety because clearly you went through one program and then like so many other couples or even men that come to me, they've been through 6 programs or whatever, and they have the wins. But in a marriage that's have, 5, 10, 15, 20 years worth of laundry that's built up in the baggage. Long-term relationship, even if you have a long-term relationship with a girlfriend and maybe you have children together, it's when you get to the point that resentment exists, the only way to let go of resentment is to have a new way of being, because you think you've let go of the resentment, as you probably learned in marriage counseling. You guys had a pivot in your relationship, stress, and exhaustion is one of the number one marriage killers. One of the number one reasons people get divorced is because they're exhausted. They're too exhausted to
Right.
show up. And it's not that they're not willing to do what they need to do for their spouse to feel loved. It's more so ignorance, and they try different things and they'll see some success, and then maybe you start have resentment that's building up because she's not trying when you're trying, and she resents because
vice versa. And then men, specifically have a tendency to be a little more grouchier than women, which tells her that it's not emotionally safe for you to share anything with me because I'm either going to bitch about it or I'm going to try to fix it. And that makes her just shut down. And then you're like, why don't you want to talk to me? And then she thinks she's talking to you because she's giving all these hints, but we don't get, the hints that they show off. And it's just ignorance. I kind of think about it like this. So right now I have a 15-year-old that'll be getting his license pretty soon. He has to go through a defensive driving class. He has to study this book. Then he has to go into the DMV and take a written test. Then they're going to give him a driving test. But I remember I'm in my second marriage now. My first marriage ended after about nearly 25 years. And in this marriage, I'm just over a decade. But I remember both times I went down to get a marriage license and I didn't have to go through this extensive testing like to drive a car. They just said, is she your cousin? I said, no. And they gave me a license. I'm like, oh, I don't have to have training for this, right? It's like nobody teaches us how to be married. There's no test we have to pass. And so it's just kind of learning how to do that. But what I wanted to ask you though, so you saw that she saw there was changes in you, but at week 4, what changes did you see in yourself leading up to week 4? And then why did you continue the program multiple times once you reached week 7?
Yeah, well, see, we haven't even discussed that yet. And I think it's important that people know I have been through the program 5 times. Okay. And to go through it one time is obviously a beautiful thing. But man, I think if anybody's really, truly serious about continuing to improve yourself, improve the way that you communicate, improve the way that you are emotionally available to your spouse, it is something that you need to continue doing. It's a work in progress is what it is, Denver. And for me, obviously the first 7 weeks was fantastic. The daily modules and having that, 2 times a week, one-on-one conversations and being able to ask questions was invaluable. And I got a little sidetracked there, Denver. What was the actual question? Because I get thinking about the whole thing, and I want to make sure that I get out to people that are knowing exactly what I mean by it.
Yeah, sure. I get it. I mean, it's a lot. And you've been through the program, multiple times now because you keep seeing those wins. And she's joined you now in the program. But my question was, clearly she saw enough changes in you at week 4 that she just gave up the money that she had put down with an attorney because that's not refundable. So what happened? Like, what were the changes that you saw in yourself that you think were the things that attracted her back so quickly within 4 weeks? Like to the point that, I think because clearly she trusted the change or she wouldn't have fired the attorney, that would have been smart. Right. So what happened? What do you think happened in you that caused such massive trust in her that you hadn't had in years, literally, to the point that she said, no, I'd be crazy to leave this man. I'm going to fire my divorce attorney. Like, what changed in you?
I think a lot of it, and it was week 2 or 3 that you understand letting go a lot of that resentment is really, really important. It's being able to have those crucial conversations with your spouse without letting them get out of control, without letting them go to that level that they don't need to go to. It's about saying, I understand what you're saying. I get what you're saying, honey. I understand what you're saying, honey. Let's talk about how that makes you feel and how that makes me feel, because I want you to know how I'm feeling. And I think that she had never seen that before. It was more of a bring up a topic and immediate anger or immediate resentment about something that had been going on for a long time. And those are things that are hard to let go of. But man, when you do, you will see very quickly that the communication changes and the way that we talk to each other changes, and it almost becomes an immediate respect for one another. And I think that's what she picked up on. I think she knew that not only was I making the genuine effort, but she could feel a respect level change. And when I say that again, it sounds impersonal, and I don't mean it to sound impersonal because it meant a lot. And she's told me that it meant a lot to her to be able to open up and be able to talk about things without there being a level of anger or, the conversation getting so heated that we just couldn't talk anymore, period. So to be able to let go of the resentment and to have those crucial conversations without letting them go to that next level was so, so important.
Let me ask you this, the initial part of the program where we talk about doing the opposite of what you're feeling, meaning here you are begging and pleading with her like, oh, this is not what I want. I don't want a divorce. I want to stay married. And then we teach you a new way of being, a new way of thinking. Instead of making it about the marriage, if you really want to work on the marriage, it's not hard work and it's not work, because working on the marriage is what's hurting the marriage. And so when we teach that, it's kind of like a shocker because it is so easy. As we go through the first few modules or the first couple of weeks, when we teach you to stop talking about the marriage and just do what you did when you met. You fell in love and you weren't talking about anything serious when you fell in love. You were talking about nothing. Hey, we have a business together. You guys are self-employed. You have a business together. So you still had to have business talks. But your personal talks, we teach you, keep those light and fun because that's what makes the marriage fun. And nobody on earth is going to leave a fun person that's happy, because if I express that I want something differently than you, then I'm telling you I'm unhappy. Well, that's like me jumping up and down saying, I'm unhappy, stay married to me. I'm unhappy, stay married to me. And by the way, I'm going to hold you accountable for my happiness. So I'm already telling you I'm unhappy and it's your fault. Stay with me. Come sit by me so we can talk about these problems, because that's so enjoyable, right? That's what made us fall in love. So, but, I noticed you just made a comment like it's work or whatever, but I feel like this maybe just habit, because we're talking about some of the marriage counseling, that we teach you to stop working on the marriage and to start working on yourself. And how shocked were you when you kind of maybe made it to probably week 2 in the modules about, wow, not working on the marriage is actually working? Like, how everybody has an aha moment where they're like, holy, I can't believe this is working. And I'm actually happy just sitting back, watching the marriage slowly be restored. And by not working on the marriage, by not talking about the marriage, it's naturally making myself more attractive, which is drawing her back to me, where it was when I was working on the marriage, it was pushing her further away. Like, how did you feel, like, emotionally or even psychologically, seeing how doing exactly the opposite of some of the things that you were taught to do, did that shock you when you started seeing those wins?
A lot of you thinking, well, I've got to become the best version of myself if I want my marriage restored. I've got to go change. I've got to go do everything differently. All the stuff that she told me of the reasons she wants out of the marriage, I've got to go change those things. If you've already done all of that, but it hasn't worked, put that in the comments if that's you. Have you become the man that she said she's always wanted, but it's not enough? Maybe you were an alcoholic. Maybe you were a controlling narcissist. Maybe you were a psychopath. Maybe you were verbally abusive. Maybe you weren't intimate with her. Maybe you didn't value her opinion. But now all of a sudden, you do all of those things, but it still hasn't worked. Here's the question. Put in the comments if you have realized that that's not enough. You changing is a beautiful thing, and that's probably a requirement.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be enough to save the marriage if she has confirmation bias.
Yeah.
You've got to lead her to change.
Like, how did you feel, like, emotionally or even psychologically, seeing how doing exactly the opposite of some of the things that you were taught to do, did that shock you when you started seeing those wins?
Well, they were obviously really good feelings, because they were emotions that I hadn't felt for the last 4 years, 5 years. They were feelings that, and I know she felt the same way. They were feelings that we had really truly missed. We hadn't done, we hadn't had those feelings in so long that when we had those moments, having a normal conversation and listening to each other, not trying to talk over each other. When we had those moments, we both knew it. And it was almost one of those things where we could look at each other and get a little smirk on our face and go, holy shit, it is working.
Yeah.
This is amazing. And, sometimes it's just little things, sitting at the table the other night, she reached over and just put her hand on top of mine. If I can tell you what a small thing like that feels like when you haven't had that sort of physical contact for years, it's hard to describe. It's really hard to describe. And we had so many moments in the first, or second, third week when things started to change, where that feeling inside of, I know both of us, was, I think we're going to save this. And at week 4, when she fired her divorce attorney, I was surprised. But at the same time, I was kind of thinking to myself, this is exactly what I thought was going to happen. This is exactly what I wanted, obviously, but just amazing to have it happen. The feelings that you get going through this program are feelings like the feelings of going back to, like you said, when you met. That kind of love, that kind of feeling, that best friend feeling back again, which was so important to me. I always had that thought process of, it's great that I have a wife that I love, but how amazing is it that I have a best friend?
Wow.
And to get that best friend back again, priceless, absolutely priceless.
Yeah, and I bet she feels the same way, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because we've always been like that. We for so many years, it was one of those things where you knew that we were going to be together forever. So to have something like that happen at, year 14, 15, 16, I think took both of us by surprise when we actually realized it was happening. But to go through the whole process and have things not work and then find your program, Denver, I can't express my gratefulness to you enough.
Let me ask you this. As you're going through the program, like each day, we go through 35 modules, Monday through Friday. There's daily modules, 5 modules per week, and then 2 times we have the live Q&A calls also. As you're going through that, you talked about you had a marriage counselor and then you switched to a professional marriage counselor from the religious marriage counselor. What was different? I mean, did you notice differences right away? And when did you start seeing successes and wins going through it? And what do you think was different about the Divorce Opera program that was, compared to things that didn't work?
I think it's really one of the biggest issue, the biggest challenge I think I had with traditional marriage counseling and the counseling through the church. Look, great intentions. Both programs, the professionals have great intentions. The church has great intentions, but there's such a major focus when you go through that on the problems. You find yourself sitting down and talking with a professional psychiatrist or talking with a pastor from the church, and it's all about the problems.
Yeah.
And to leave that session, spending all that money, right? To leave that session and come home, you've just spent, a solid hour and a half talking about your problems, and all you did was bring your problems home, and nobody ever discussed solutions. And to have that start happening almost immediately in your program was a change that both of, I know she picked up on it, but for me to all of a sudden realize that I'm not bringing my problems home anymore. I'm bringing my solutions home. I'm bringing the changes that I need to make emotionally and mentally home, instead of coming home and having those problems be the issue or the conversation that we're having that evening. So for me, it was the problems being discussed versus your program, which is solutions.
Right.
And that was a huge part of the success for both of us.
Let me ask you something else. So one of the things that you mentioned, which is a very common issue, was that you guys had an issue. You didn't know. I mean, clearly she had a vested interest in saving the marriage in the beginning, because marriage counselor number 1, marriage counselor number 2, nobody just enjoys going through marriage counseling, and at least not the people that I meet. As
Right.
you guys are going through the program, now that you've been through it, now you've been through it multiple times and she's joining it with you, what's changed about your communication and the way that is made it more enjoyable? Like you're talking to each other like friends. Like a lot of times we talk to our spouse when we don't really know what to do and we're kind of ignorant on how to communicate. It's human nature to save the worst for our spouse, to save whoever's in my bed. That's who I save the worst for because I can take them for granted and they're not supposed to leave. But you don't do that with your best friend. And you mentioned that you guys had become best friends again and that you had that before. And now you have that back. And ultimately, that wasn't even your goal in the beginning. You guys have kids together. You didn't want the kids to go through a broken home. You were partially doing it for the kids. But at the same time, you were kind of like wits end desperate. I think you said you had originally told her that you wanted a divorce because you were just trying to provoke her to change. And then she's like, okay, fine. And she files it. And now you're like pleading, like, I don't really want a divorce. I just wanted you to change. So you're like, there's a saying that I like to say in the program a lot, that if it's to be, it's up to me. And I feel like that you really took that bull by the horn. But today, when you guys are in conversation and you're talking about problems or the kids, what some things that maybe would have used to either triggered her or triggered you to become emotionally immature, where you would have reacted to each other in an immature, undesirable, unfun, unhappy way. How do those same conversations take place today?
Well, there are still, look, nothing's absolutely perfect, right? There are still moments, but I think having gone through the program 7 times and now having her go through it with me, we may be having a conversation now. But what's important is the ability to be able to recognize when it's going in a direction it shouldn't go in. And part of the program teaches you that you need to mentally, verbally stop at that point, reassess the conversation that you're having, and bring that emotion out of it and get back into that. This is my best friend I'm talking to. I'm not going to drag this into that type of conversation that we used to have. And we both do that now. We both do that without even thinking. But there are times when we're having a conversation when we both know that it's going in the wrong direction, and I might get a little look on my face, or she'll get a little look on her face and go, remember what Denver said? And we will just bust out laughing, which can also alleviate a lot of the challenges and issues in a conversation too. But yeah, no, it's, the conversations that we have now are conversations like we used to have when best friends have, and you just don't talk to your best friend the way we were talking to each other towards the 15, 16, 17 years of marriage. It was unacceptable. And to learn how to have a conversation again on a normal basis, like you're talking to your best friend and talking to someone that you love, is a huge part of the program.
Let me ask you, you've had some awesome success with the program. Why have you continued it? It's very normal for men to continue the program past the 7 weeks, to opt in for another 7 weeks and another 7 weeks. But what made you make the decision? What was the key factors where you started the second week, the second cycle of 7 week, and the third and the fourth? Like what made you stick with the program? I mean, you had what you wanted at 4 weeks, but yet not only did you complete the 7 weeks, you went through another 7 weeks and another 7 weeks, and now she's in the 7 weeks with you. What was the deciding factor in that? Why are you still with the program? And why did she join with you?
Well, I think she probably joined because she started having those almost feelings of missing out on something. She almost had those feelings of, wait a minute, he's making all this progress and I'm missing out on something. I want in on this. That made it really important to continue the program as well. But I also think that, you can learn a lot of things in 7 weeks from any program, right? But it's the practicing and the repetition and continuing to educate yourself on your relationship and understanding that other person. I don't think I didn't want after 7 weeks to stop and maybe fall back into a habit that I didn't want to fall back into. I wanted to make sure that what I was learning and what I was taking away from the program was something that was ingrained in me, something that I was going to continue doing, because I had gotten the love of my life back and I wasn't going to lose her again.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that stems a lot from where we talk about, I'm constantly preaching on it's 100% of the time, because that's our goal. There's other marriage programs out there. I know I actually tried some of them when I was having some issues in my first marriage, and actually ended up having some issues in my second marriage. And ultimately, as I didn't have a win in the first marriage. It went down and something called limerence. And where that's kind of touted out there is, oh, if they have limerence towards somebody else, that'll fade and they'll come back to you. Well, in my case, it didn't. My ex-wife is married to her limerence, because it wasn't about the things that I did right. It was, in that marriage, it was about the one time I slipped up, which took it all back to ground zero. And I love that you're saying sticking with it, because you've honored your wife in changing who you are, literally. Like, you've transformed. You're not even the same person today. And that is so attractive to her that it not only brought her back to you, but it makes her want to be like you. And she's like, wow, I'm picking up some cues from him, but I need to hear this firsthand, because I want that same thing. I want to be attractive like that. Let me ask you another question. So as you're going through the modules, do you appreciate the immersion that we do this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that those modules are available every single day? And then on Saturday and Sunday, and Monday, Tuesday through Friday, you have the camaraderie of all of the men that are sharing the wins in the groups that on our collaboration groups, where we're sharing. Somebody will say, hey, I had this issue today. They're sharing the win. That's encouragement. Or somebody else will say, oh, I had this fall today. And then we're there to encourage. I'll jump in there and say, okay, this is what we talked about, or this is coming up. Or maybe you should schedule a Q&A call with me, and let's address that specific issue if it hasn't come up yet in the module, because you haven't covered that yet. How did that support structure work for you as something that was different than just a marriage counseling?
Hey guys, I want to share something with you. If you're still watching the video at this stage, I'm assuming that you're getting at least some benefit from the content. I want to give you something else. I'm offering right now a free masterclass, and at the end of that masterclass, I'm giving you an opportunity to apply to work with me. The website to do that is denvergriffin.com/masterclass. And if you're enjoying some of this content, please hit that like button and subscribe. I'm posting YouTube videos daily right now to give you free content in order to help you save your marriage. And I want you to be notified as those videos become available in real time.
How did that support structure work for you as something that was different than just a marriage counseling?
That's a great question, and then one that's very easy for me to answer. And that, I felt like I would rather word it this way. I would feel like if I hadn't been immersed in the program, if I hadn't been immersed every single day and been at the QAs, that I would have had that opportunity to drop the ball. If I had a bad day, and I had the opportunity to wait a full day, 2 days before I joined back into a conversation with the group and with you, that would allow me to fall into something that I didn't want to fall into. That I think not only did I want to be immersed in it that way, I think you have to be immersed in it that way. I think you have to jump into it 100%, and you have to commit to it, because it's almost, you hate to make the comparison to like AA, right? I mean, they go to a meeting all the time. That's what they do. That's how they get better. And I think it's important to immerse yourself in a program like this and follow it exactly the way it's supposed to be followed.
Yeah, and that's the reason that I set up the program, because I don't really know anything else that's out there that's like this. There are some similar programs that are out there, but they're not with anybody that has experience, that's been through the problems that the clients are. I've been married the first time for nearly 25 years. I fought tooth and nail to try to save that marriage. It ended in divorce. I've experienced the way that feels like. I know what it's like to have 25 years worth of assets together that you're looking at dividing, and dealing with custody and child support and alimony and all the stuff that goes with that. And there's not a lot of other people out there that are helping men save their marriages that understand time is of the essence. The clock is ticking, And even if we save your marriage for your finances, if she's going off and buying a new car or getting another mortgage or signing a 12-month lease somewhere, then if you guys do get back together, you have the credit issues and can you afford it? And is that going to push her further because now she's got her own place and it's going to be harder to get back together? And then the longer that you're separated, the more likely she is to go badmouth you to everybody because you probably have been a jerk a lot of it. And maybe she has too, right? Maybe it's all her fault because everybody that comes to me initially, it's all her fault, right? But then we transition to, if it is to be, it's up to me. So we quit worrying about what's her fault and what can we do, which always works. That's why I don't tout statistics like some of the competitors that are offering solutions for marriage. But it floors me. There's a program out there where they're constantly bragging about we have 70% success. And I'm like, I would be humiliated to say I have 70% success. To me, that's just like, that's barely above the divorce rate is 50%. Why are you bragging that you put people that invest money into your program and your course and you give them an extra 20% success on their marriage? I mean, they could probably have an extra 10% if they would read some books and just follow those. But the reason I set up the program is because I remember what didn't work for me where I ended up in a divorce the first time, and that didn't work for me. Sure. And so I took that wisdom and took that into my second marriage and thinking, okay, I'm never going to have any problems. I studied marriage for a year before I even started dating again because I did not want to go through that again. I did not want to go through be responsible for someone else's pain, including children or stepchildren or grandchildren. I have 5 grandchildren as of today. I didn't want to put somebody else through that. And my wife and I actually studied in this marriage. We studied marriage and we became marriage coaches for our church. And we just thought everything was going to be peachy. And then we had a terminal illness come up. And ultimately that was a win that we got through. But that 2.5 years, it robbed our marriage. It stole intimacy. We couldn't be together intimately anymore. I couldn't speak. There was no more date nights. My wife, which was my soulmate and my best friend, I lost my voice because I had stage 4 throat cancer, and she became my nurse who had to wipe my rear end for 2 years, basically is what it boiled down to. And that built up resentment on both people's part, and we just didn't know how to let that go individually. And I started touting like, I can't live by this anymore. And we probably would have been okay because we knew how to maneuver things. We had 100% success in coaching couples in marriages, but we were struggling with something new in ours that we hadn't even actually encountered with a client. And that was resentment. It wasn't from affair. It wasn't from, I understand I've been cheated on. I've cheated. I went through all this stuff in my first marriage. I know the emotions. I know how not to deal with that. And now how to deal with that stuff. I learned how to do that through experience. But now we're dealing with something that it's not my fault that I was diagnosed with cancer. Maybe it was my diet. Now that I've created this program to see what are some differences, it makes me realize that if it's to be, it's up to me, including my health, that I'm not going to be married to any story anymore. I teach spice. If you want to attract your wife back, then become spicy. How do you smell? And that's spiritual, physical, intellectual, your character, and your emotional attractiveness. Those are 5 areas that you can actually increase your attractiveness in. And so maybe somebody will say, well, physical attractiveness, I'll have a man that's new in the program on the enrollment call. I can't increase in physical attractiveness because I have diabetes. Well, guess what? That's a story that you're married to, because there are some things that a diabetic can do to increase in physical attractiveness. That doesn't mean that you have to do the same thing that I'm doing. That doesn't mean that you have to have a 6-pack, but there are some things that you can do. And so, but if we're married to this story of this is why I can't do it, I was married to the story that I became a complete prick because I got on some pain medication going through cancer treatment that actually a side effect of it, I later read, was extreme vertigo, can't walk, lose your balance, and causes rage. And it made me say some really nasty, vulgar, mean things that in my right mind I would have never said. But I could have, and I actually had resentment when I figured out what that was, and I let go of that medication, and then those issues dissipated. But now I'm separated, and my wife got on an airplane and flew 2,000 miles away because I told her to. And now I'm sitting here by myself thinking I didn't want her to leave, but I wanted the situation to change. And I just have more resentment because I'm thinking, well, I'm the victim because it wasn't my fault I was on medication that caused rage. Okay, that's true. Maybe it wasn't my fault I was on medication that caused rage. But that was a story that I was holding on to that was keeping me from attracting her back. So, do I want to hold on to my story, which may be truthful, or do I want to say that what can I do to make up for that? How can I go to her now instead of saying, I'm sorry that I told you that I wanted a divorce and to get the F out of here and go buy a plane ticket? That sounds great. I'm sorry, but that's just selfish. All that's saying is, I want you to come back to the mean prick. But I transitioned into a different way of thinking and saying, in every area of my life, I'm not going to say it was not my fault that I got stage 4 throat cancer. What were some life choices that I chose to make that could have contributed to that? And how do I let go of that story? How do I let go of the story that it wasn't my fault that I had anger issues? I could have took the initiative to read about that medication as soon as I started feeling weird to see if that was an issue. So I need to let go of the story because that's pushing her further away, just giving that excuse. Instead of saying, what is my story from my past? That's last season. That's yesterday. Who do I get to be today and moving forward to increase in my spiritual, physical, intellectual, character, and emotional attractiveness? How do I emotionally attract her back? I've never been a spiritual person, maybe, which I was a spiritual person, but maybe if you're not and you're holding on to this story that I can't increase in spiritual attractiveness, if that's attractive to her, you better damn well figure that out and let go of your stories. And there may be truth to there's a lot of things that we can't do, but that was the old us. The new season, the new way of thinking is what can I do? Because we get to transition into a new way of thinking, which is ultimately a new way of being. And when that's actually in our heart, it's going to come out our mouth. And when it comes out our mouth, it goes in her ears and in her eyes and eventually melts her heart. And they'll always come running back to you because it is the 1% of the 1% of men. We teach you how to be the 1% of the 1% of men for life. Because whenever I take on a new client, I'm not taking the man on as a client. I'm taking on the marriage and the legacy that marriage will leave. I have a heart to stop leaving brokenness to children and grandchildren and stepchildren and in-laws. I want to leave a legacy of somebody's got to stand up for love. Somebody's got to stand up for marriage for the sake of the generations to follow us. Even if you don't have kids together, they're watching. Do you know how many millennials will say they're never going to get married, that they just want to live together or whatever, because they saw mom and dad get a divorce and they saw mom and dad and step-parents get a divorce and a divorce because nobody stood up for this. Working on your marriage is the easiest thing in the world to do if you have a step-by-step process where somebody says, stop working on the marriage. That's what's killing it, dummy. Let's do the opposite of what you feel like you should do. Let's do the opposite of what you think you should do. And let's stop working on the marriage. Let's stop all of these hard things. And let's just show you how to be happy, attractive to yourself. You like what you see in the mirror, which eventually causes her to say, and she'll run back to you. And I love these. I love this. I'm going to bring this up again. I love these Instagram posts. I see them all the time because I follow this stuff about if you really love her, let her go. And I'm thinking, okay, that really makes sense, right? If I really love her, I want to deal her a legacy of divorce and also deal that spirit onto my children, that they're now dealt the legacy of divorce. And maybe they've already been through one. Do I want to deal it to them again? Because if you've been through a divorce, and especially if you've been through a second divorce or a third divorce, every time you go through that, the next marriage statistically drastically lowers in the success rate statistically. And it also throws those same statistics on your children. Children that have been through a divorce, or especially multiple divorces, are more likely to go through a divorce because no one ever said, I'm going to stand up for this. We're going to figure this out and we're going to show them how it's done. And so many people struggle with that, especially in separations, especially when you have children or stepchildren. A lot of times the children or the stepchildren, most divorce, 70 something % of the divorces are filed by the women. And I would say over 50% of the time, the children that go with mom or stepmom, they now have confirmation bias because it's human nature. She's going to bitch about you, right? So that gives confirmation bias to the kids where they're now encouraging her to move forward with the divorce. He shouldn't treat you that way, right? Because what's happening is we as men, until we go through this program, we forget everything. But women,
right,
they remembered when you got triggered 17 years ago and called her a bad name. And that all comes back when she gets a divorce attorney and she remembers it all. And more often than not,
right,
she starts talking to her girlfriend about that because she needs somebody to side with her, which is an enemy. And we talk about how to deal with that enemy in the program. But then the kids become the enemy because they start hearing it and they feel sorry for her. And then you got the in-laws who always loved you, but now she's telling them a few bad things and embellishing it probably some. And now they're against you. And now you have, and listen, as the time progresses in a separation, there's more enemies toward the marriage because she's speaking. And because people love her and they don't want her to get hurt, they're encouraging her to not believe what the changes that you see. And that's why it is so utterly important that if you're a man and you're in separation and you're trying to attract your wife back because you actually genuinely care and you want her to have the best life and you want her to have that with you, because if you love her, it's stupid to let her go, but it's so smart to be the husband that she deserves and attract her back. That's what you should do if you love her. But it's much more difficult to attract her back the more time that lapses, because the longer you're separated, the more she speaks, and the more people that love her that hear that become the enemy of the marriage. And then you have to deal with that. So the clock is literally ticking. And that's why when you have a wife that's left and filed for divorce, she has what's called confirmation bias, where she's already got some beliefs that she's telling herself to justify leaving the marriage. And you can do a million things right. If you go through some program or a 4-day class or something like that, you'll pick up some good things and they will probably work if it's a good teacher. Unfortunately, the reason that those type of programs are touting 70% success rates, like that's something to brag about, is because it's not lasting change. It's because to a woman that has confirmation bias, that's where they're already thinking this isn't real, you can do 99 things right, but you do one, let her say one thing that triggers the old you, and it's back to square one, buddy, and the divorce is back on hotter than ever. The reason that I implemented this program where it's every single day you're in these modules for at least an hour a day, that way we know that by the time you get through 7 weeks, all of your questions have been answered. You have unlimited access to me for one-on-one phone calls if that's needed. And you have the community that's going to hold you accountable. You can't say the program doesn't work because all of these other people are in there saying it does work, and we're not going to let you fail. And we're also not going to listen to your pity party. If it's to be, it's up to me. And we're all going to hold you to that standard. And that's what works. What works is to stop working on the marriage and stop believing that it doesn't work, and things just naturally come. And you actually were a delight to work with.
I just want to jump back real quick and look, the support groups are fantastic. They really are. And don't, like you said, Denver, they will call you out. they will call you out, and some of it's hard to hear, but at the same time, they're all learning moments. They're all moments that help us move forward in our relationship. Man, I call your program a blessing and a godsend, but it's also a blessing and a godsend to have her with me. It's one of those things where you don't want to embellish anything and say it's better than it's ever been, but after going through what we've been through, it feels like it's better than it's ever been. And it's an amazing feeling.
Wow. Love that. Love that. Anything that you'd want to say to any of the viewers that's watching this video that's kind of on the fence about, should I do this?
Oh man, seriously, that's the reason I wanted to do this with you, because I wanted to make people understand that, man, if you are on that fence, jump off it and jump off onto this side, because you will not regret going through this program. You will not regret changing yourself emotionally. You will not regret saving your marriage. You will not regret getting your best friend back and having that love that you experienced early on. Try to remember that. If you can just grab a few of those moments from back when you first met your spouse and understand that you can have that back through this program, then jump off.
Men, if your marriage is in a place where you are facing a divorce, it does not matter if she has a boyfriend. It does not matter if she has avoidant personality or attachment personality. It does not matter if you or her have childhood traumas that you're working through. It does not matter if there's an affair partner, whether that's emotional, physical, or sexual. If confirmation bias exists, there's a way that you can take the first step today by joining my free Marriage U-Turn Masterclass, where I'm going to take you on the first step in dissolving your problem, which is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is psychological, and with enough time, it becomes biological. But the good news is all of that can be reversed if you know how to do it. I'm going to help you do this in my free Marriage U-Turn Masterclass. My video editor is putting the QR code on the screen right now. You can scan that or visit my website to register for my free live Marriage U-Turn Masterclass at denvergriffin.com/masterclass. Visit that today to take the first step of changing your life. You have a need for speed. Put time on your side, because time is probably running out.